If a franchise costs 50 grand and you've got 50 grand in your savings and you deploy that 50 grand in your savings to buy this franchise, you're stupid. Sorry to say, that is a silly move. You need to have a buffer. Hey everyone, welcome to Courtside Conversations. My name's Emile, founder and owner of Little Boomers Basketball, and it's a pleasure to be your host today. Wherever you're watching today's episode, I hope you're having a booming day, and yes, the pun is intended. My journey to entrepreneurship started on May 1st, 2018 when I launched my first basketball program with 9 kids enrolled. Today, thousands of kids across Australia are thriving in our programs, all thanks to the commitment and passion of our incredible franchisees. This podcast is here to give you real, straightforward, no BS insights into business, entrepreneurship, and what it's like to own a franchise. Without further ado, let's get into today's episode. Welcome back to Courtside Conversations. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hope you're having an awesome day and an awesome week. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about something, it's a problem I see on the phone when I'm speaking to people interested in franchising. And we're going to cover an episode on how you can get financially ready to buy a franchise without breaking the bank. And this is a very, very important episode because I think when somebody's franchising, there's a lot of emotional excitement. As a result, logic goes out the window. And when they come into the door of franchising, reality sets in and shit starts to hit the fan. Sorry for the language. So we're going to talk about how you can get financially ready to buy a franchise. I'm also going to cover in today's episode an interesting story that happened with one of our franchisees that we learned from. We're going to talk about the importance of having a buffer when you're investing in a franchise. And then I'm going to show you how to break down investment and profitability so that you can calculate when you're going to get your return on investment. Because so many people ask on the phone, when do I get my return on investment? When's my ROI coming in? But they actually don't know the proper way and the numbers behind calculating the ROI. We're going to talk about that. I'll see you in the episode. Okay, so we had one of our franchisees, let's call their name Jenny. Okay, well, obviously Jenny's not her real name. Jenny came into the franchise as a Little Boomers franchise owner, took it under a loan. They borrowed money for the franchise. And Jenny had a lot of responsibilities that maybe you and I don't have. Family, other mortgage, kids. When you have all of those responsibilities, there's pressure for the business to perform, right? And if you've got a certain expectation of, how the business wants or how you want the business to perform to help you financially, there's a lot of stress when it comes to that. And the business did perform, but then it declined, and then it rapidly declined, and it didn't produce the income that Jenny needed to support her family, her mortgage, her lifestyle, and everything. So we learned a lesson from that to make sure that franchisees, before they come into the network, have got a buffer financially to support them, and that they're not solely relying on the income from the franchise to support their lifestyle. And that was a really interesting learning lesson that we learned. What for you guys, I get a lot of people on the phone, they say, oh man, I can't wait to get out of the 9 to 5. I want to get out of the 9 to 5. I can't wait to get out of the 9 to 5. Like, when can we make this happen? I really need to make it happen. There's a lot of desperation to get out of the 9 to 5. And I understand that because I was in the 9 to 5. I was working for an employer. I mean, I had a great employment, but I wanted to do my own thing. And there's a lot of dissatisfaction in the workplace. It's, morale's at the all-time low, turnover's terrible. I understand the urgency to get out of the 9 to 5 and to start your own thing, especially if you've been in corporate for 20 or 30 years. But you want to make sure that you prepare yourself financially and that you don't just make it a decision based on emotion. And I always say this saying, don't let a franchise be your sole hope for getting out of the 9 to 5 rat race. I'll say that one more time. Don't let a franchise be your sole hope for getting out of the 9 to 5 rat race. And this is why. Number one, a franchise takes time. It takes time to build up. It takes time to create money, revenue, profit. It takes time. You are practically, unless you're purchasing an existing location, most of the time you're building a business from scratch with the established systems and the support and the brand, but it's from scratch. It takes time. If you quit your 9 to 5 job and you want to get into the franchise thinking that it's going to make a tremendous amount of profit from day one, it's going to create a lot of pressure in your life. So remember, it takes time. Number two, you probably won't see a profit for at least a year. And obviously it can depending on how successful the franchise is, but you won't see a profit for a while. But the fees are still going to come in. There's still going to be fees. There'll be royalty fees. There'll be marketing fees, training fees, whatever other fees are outlined in the franchise agreement. The fees are still going to keep rolling in. So profit is going to take time and probably won't happen for the first year. But guess what? The fees don't care about the profit. Hey, we don't care about you. We got to get paid still. So the royalties and the fees and the marketing fees are still going to come in. Thirdly, it might not work. Don't be too optimistic and naive. You've got to understand that the franchise might not work. That's the reality of it. Some work, some don't. It might not work, and you have to be willing to swallow that pill. Finally, the reason why you don't want to make franchising your sole reason for getting out of the 9 to 5 rat race is if you have a lot of pressure for the franchise to perform financially, and it doesn't, or it isn't going to your expectations, it will create a tremendous amount of stress to you. And the problem with stress to you is if you've got a family, if you've got a husband or wife, if you've got kids, all aspects of your life will be affected. Your relationships, your health, how you communicate with your spouse. Because when there's a lot of pressure for a business to perform and you haven't given it that time to grow, it's going to create stress in your life, and it's going to branch off to every element of your life, and it's not going to be healthy. You're not going to be good to be talking around. Like someone's going to come up to you, hey, how you doing? Yeah, good. How are you? You know, like, geez, what's wrong with you? You know, so it's going to create a lot of pressure. So I want to start this episode by saying, don't make franchising be your sole hope for getting out of the 9 to 5 rat race. Now, this is actionable steps that I'm giving to you for how you can financially prepare for a franchise so that you don't go break in the bank. The first thing is, please guys, have a buffer when you're buying a franchise. If a franchise costs 50 grand and you've got 50 grand in your savings and you deploy that 50 grand in your savings to buy this franchise, you're stupid. Sorry to say, that is a silly move. You need to have a buffer. If the franchise costs 50 grand and you got 50 grand in savings, have 100 grand, have 75 grand. You got to have a buffer and not go all in with the franchise. Because if you've got a family, if you've got mortgage, if you've got to put food on the table and you've literally gone all in, that is a very unwise and silly decision. So what we do when we're recruiting franchisees is we make sure that they're financially okay for the first year, that they got some kind of buffer, because we know that if they don't have a buffer, there's going to be, going back to what I was saying, all this stress and all this tension for the business to perform. So please make sure you've got a financial buffer. And that might mean that you have to delay the franchise, but that's okay. Rather you take the time, make a more educated move than rushing to the decision. So make sure you have a buffer. This one's important. If you're taking out a loan for the franchise, okay, don't rely on the business's performance and profitability to pay off that loan. That is another silly mistake that people do. They say, you know what, I'll take out a loan and hopefully the profits of the business pay for the loan. Guys, like I said before, the business might not make profit. It takes time to build up. That loan still needs to be repaid. Hey, just quickly, if you're enjoying today's episode, it will mean the world to me if you can leave a positive review or share it with a friend that may benefit from this. I've also put some bonus resources in the description, including a real franchise case study that you can download under our Franchise Success Blueprint. Hope you find it useful. Enjoy the rest of the episode and rock on. Adios. You need to make sure that you are comfortable financially paying off the loan yourself, whether it's personal income, another job, savings, whatever. Don't rely on the business to pay it off. I'll give you a classic example. Let's say you're going to go buy a house and the house cost $1 million. We all know in Australia, the government wants 10 or 20% to pay off that house. Let's say that you do have, 20% of $1 million, $200,000, is it? No, it's 10%. Yeah, $200,000. And you go to the bank, hey, I've got my $200,000. Can I have the house now? The bankers are going to say, yeah, awesome. Thanks for that 200. There you go. No, there's something called serviceability. They want to make sure that you can service the loan. So what does a bank say? They say, thank you for that $200,000. We'll take that. Can we get pay slips for the last 1 year to show what your income is so that we know you can pay off this loan. The banks ask for it, right? Because they want to make sure that if somebody's going to take out a loan for $200,000, they can service and pay the monthly fee. And that's when your paycheck or your pay slips come in handy. Same thing with franchising. Just don't think that the loan, that the business's profits is going to pay for the loan. Don't have that misconception. Make sure you got money ready to pay off that loan yourself. Third thing, I love this. Whenever you are investing in a franchise and you're doing your numbers, your P&L statements, whatever, there's a tendency for us humans to look at the best case scenario. Because we're very optimistic creatures, and I'm very optimistic by nature, there's a tendency for us to let's look at the best case scenario. We've got, in our franchise, is based on term enrollments. We've got 300 enrollments every single term. We've got 5 daycares. We've got 5 schools. We've got 10 coaches. Best case scenario, oh my goodness, I'm making $100,000 profit in 6 months. I'm going to pay off the investment. You can't look at franchising in the best case scenario. What I would advise you run 3 scenarios. Number 1, your best case scenario. Number 2, like middle average. And number 3, the lowest or the worst scenario. And you need to be okay with all 3 scenarios coming into play. So what we do, for an example, like worst case scenario might be you only have 70 enrollments every single term. Don't know why. Location, you didn't marketing efforts, whatever. You only have 70 enrollments every single term and it's producing this amount of profit. Scenario 2, which is the average, you've got about 120 enrollments every single term. This is what the profit is. Scenario 3, best case scenario, you hit 200 enrollments in your first year every single term and you're pumping out X amount of profit. You've got to run all 3 scenarios, best, average, worst, and most importantly, you need to be okay with all those 3 situations coming into play. You need to be comfortable and say, you know what, if this worst case scenario happens and we're only turning over this, we'll be okay financially. So run 3 scenarios. Now, what I want to do is talk to you about how to look at the return on investment, like when you will make your money back. And this, again, guys, this is not financial, this is advice, but you've got to do your own due diligence. Don't be a fool and hear what I say and do your own research. When you're looking at the investment, I'm going to give you an example of how to look at your return on investment and when you'll make your money back. Let's say you're buying a franchise for $100K. You add up all the expenses, the franchise, the vehicle wrap, everything, and it's $100K. Okay, so you have just paid $100K for your franchise investment. It's also called a turnkey operation. That's your big investment. And let's say you're saying, okay, before I pay $100K, I need to determine when I'm going to make my return on investment. Like, when do I cover that $100K? Let's say, we're going to use round figures here to make it easier. In your first month, you've turned over $10,000 in revenue. That's sales, top line figure. For those that don't know, profit is revenue minus expenses. This is revenue, top line sales. In sales, you've turned over $10,000, whether that's cafe purchases, you've sold this amount of items, this amount of equipment, you've made $10,000. The average person will say, awesome, I've only got $90,000 left on my investment to pay off. Because remember, if you're going to pay $100K, guys, you don't start making profit until you've paid off that investment technically. So you want to pay off that $100K, and in theory, everything after that is profit. But the foolish person will say, okay, I've made $10,000 in revenue in my first month under the franchise. Awesome. I've only got $90,000 left before I start making profit, because $100,000 minus $10,000 is $90,000. Wrong, incorrect. What you need to calculate is from that $10,000 portion of revenue, how much of that is profit that's going to be paid off to the investment, because it's the profit figure at the bottom that gets covered by the investment. I'll give you an example. Let's say from that $10,000, you paid royalty fees, which is an ongoing fee, which let's say it's 10% on revenue. 10% of $10,000 is $1,000 in royalty fee. So you have to automatically shave off $1,000 in royalty fee. Let's say for that month, you also paid $3,000 in staff and wages. Pay the staff. And then let's say in that same month, you also paid $1,000 in rent. And that's it. So you add up the $1,000 royalty fee, you add up the $3,000 staff cost, and you add up the $1,000 rent cost. That gives you $5,000 expenses. Now what you do is you get $10,000 in revenue minus that $5,000, and your profit for that month is $5,000. Now that $5,000 goes to the 100K, and your investment now is 95K left. That's your return on investment. You have now officially spent $5,000 to cover off that 100K. So it's not the $10,000 revenue that deducts from your initial investment. It's that $5,000 profitability. And now you can see that you've only got $95,000 of your investment remaining until you pay it all off and you're now profitable. But a lot of people don't understand the numbers, and hopefully this education helped you to really say, okay, what I need to do is calculate my sales, take away my expenses, and then see what the profit is, and that goes towards paying the investment off. That's how you should be looking at the franchise in terms of when you're going to get your return on investment. So team, that brings us to the end of the episode today, which is about how to get financially ready to buy a franchise. The key lessons that I would like you to walk away with if you're thinking about buying a franchise is think about the story I spoke about with Jenny. You don't want to be in that situation. You want to make sure that here are my steps to preparing for a franchise. Firstly, understand that it takes time. It takes time to build up the franchise. It takes time to create revenue and profit. You might not get a profit for the first year, but the fees will still kick on from day one. So you don't want to have an unnecessary stress in your life where all your other, your family, your health, everything's taken to effect. So my advice to you is have a buffer financially. If the investment is 50K, don't go using your life savings to buy a franchise. Stupid decision. If you're taking out a loan, make sure that you have enough cash or some type of income to service that loan. Do not rely on the business's performance to pay off that loan. When you're running your numbers, run 3 different scenarios. Worst case, average, best case scenario. And finally, when you're calculating how to view your return on investments, when you're getting your P&L, look at all your expenses, take that out of your revenue, and that is what goes towards paying your investment. Team, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you liked it, guys, please give me feedback. Comment on below. If you hated it, I love hate as well, guys. I love all types of feedback. Put it below. Like, comment, share it with a friend. Share it with somebody that might be interested in franchising that you think will find this episode informative. And I'll see you in the next episode.